Now, bringing on team members can be scary AF. And look, I've had my fair share of hiring and firing as an online business manager, but also in my own business. And I can attest that it is not an easy thing, but it is the number one way that you can scale your business as an online business manager. So if you are a brave OBM or service-based support provider and you are ready for this next step in your business, then in today's video, I've got some fantastic tips to help you really get the best out of your team so that you can scale that freedom-based, profitable business that I know you want. I'm Sarah Noked, and I am the founder of OBM School, and I teach online business managers and service-based support providers how to successfully grow and scale a service-based business online so that you can have the type of freedom and flexibility that you seek, working with the right clients and getting paid what you want and having a life and business by design. And I'm really glad that you're joining me for today's video, because if you're interested in team, that means that you're interested in scaling, and that is fantastic. So first things first, congratulations. This is not an easy step. I know myself that my own solopreneur journey, I really didn't budge on the solopreneur front for a good 2 years before I became open-minded to the idea of team. And I think that is because most of us solopreneurs in that mindset believe that we are the only ones that can do these things, and that bringing on team is going to create a lot of headache and a lot more work. And that's true. It is more of a headache and it is more work, but ultimately over time, that does diminish and it does become the only real way that you can scale your business, because raising your prices as a solopreneur can only get you so far. It is really when you start to embark on this notion of team-based business or agency that you really begin to make more money and work a lot less, and perhaps work more in your zone of genius, like myself, because I found that as I continued to scale my team, there were things that I found that I really liked about building a team that I really didn't think I would to begin with. You know, I think a lot of us, especially my community of online business managers, a lot of us refer to ourselves as introverts. Sometimes I think I'm an introvert, sometimes I think I'm an extrovert. But the truth is that regardless of what your personality type is, there are very clear ways to build a team that are gonna help you succeed in the long run. And I wanna share some very valuable tips here today, starting with something that is not so obvious. And that is that growing a team is an investment. And when you start to look at it as an investment, it really starts to change the way that you feel about your business. So I'll give you an example. When I brought on Tovi, she is my OBM. When I brought her into my business, I knew that I was gonna bring her on as a full-time employee. And I'm not gonna get into full-time versus hiring a contractor. If you are just getting started with your team, then you absolutely want to start in the contractor arena. But for me, as a seasoned person who was building the team and I'm getting into this employment piece, it made sense for me to really look at bringing her on as an investment. And you should be looking at bringing on team members as investments. So for example, if I knew that bringing on Tovi was going to be a 6-figure investment for my business this year, then I treat it as such. I make sure that I have at least 50% of that investment saved so that I don't feel over the course of the year that I am struggling to pay my team member, because I think that's the worst place to be in when you feel like you can't pay your team because you haven't budgeted correctly. So that is why it is so important to look at team as an investment. So whether you're bringing on a full-time team member in your agency, and kudos to you if that's where you're at, or you are bringing on a VA contractor at 5 hours a month, you should be budgeting for that team member as an investment and have at least 50% of that saved up before you even onboard that person, so you don't feel so pressured and stressed and really, quite honestly, maybe make decisions based on emotion because you're like, oh my God, I'm so tight for cash this month. I can't pay myself. And I've got this other team member. So when you start to really look at team as an investment, it really does change your mindset. And it helped me to really be able to make bigger investments and almost take bigger risks with my team because I was being more thoughtful of where that money was going. So if you do have a team member that you're bringing on, I encourage you to think about what that would look like if it was an investment and not just an expense. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's a little bit over my head, or if you're in a position in your business where you're not sure if you need a team. Last week I made a video all about, do you need a team? Really covering the who, the what, and the where. So I'm gonna post that here for you guys so you can check that out too. If you are just at the beginning of your journey, then I really recommend that you get started there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what it looks like to bring on teams. So I talked a little bit about treating it as an investment. Now the next big thing is when you bring on team, you really need to make sure that you are not working for free. Okay, so bless my OBM community and bless all of us service support providers out there, really and truly. But I'm sorry to say this, really from the bottom of my heart, it took me a while to learn this as well. So I'm not, by no means am I an angel in this situation, but you are bringing on those team members to work directly on client work, meaning if you charge your client $60 an hour and you bring on somebody to do that work on your behalf, you have to make sure that the amount that you pay your subcontractor, your employee, your team member, leaves a little bit of meat on the bone. Okay, for some reason, this is just naturally what happens. I know that a lot of us don't charge enough for whatever reason. You feel like, okay, well, I'm not gonna charge this client enough, and then I'm gonna bring on this team member and I'm gonna pay this team member their worth. So what ends up happening is your client is billing you at $60 an hour, and that team member is also billing you at $50 or $60 an hour. And what ends up happening is, as the amazing service-based support providers / OBMs that we are, we do incredible work for our clients, and our trades or the people that come in to support us don't necessarily do the level of work that we are expecting. And what ends up happening is that you, dear OBM, need to get that work done on your own. So you've maybe paid that subcontractor or that contractor to do the work, and here you are doing it again. A little tip that I teach inside of OBM school is making sure that you have at least a 50% markup on your subcontractor costs. And if you stick to that margin, you're not gonna get into a situation where you're gonna likely not get into, never say never, but you're likely not gonna get into a situation where you are working for free, because what happens is work doesn't get done properly, or something happens and then you're finding that you're paying your subcontractor, but you're also working, and your client is just getting a win-win situation, and you are getting a lose-lose situation because you're not making the kind of money and you end up working for free because your agency or your team-based business just won't be profitable. So you need to make sure that when you are bringing on team, you are taking into account all the expenses and all the overhead needed to really nurture and make that relationship with that team member happen. Really and truly, there is so much that goes into creating a team culture when you're working online and making sure that the team has the right technology to adequately work with clients. So don't overlook those things, or don't turn a blind eye. And above all, if you are growing a team-based business, you need to make sure that your prices reflect that. So if you are struggling to increase your prices or struggling with your money mindset around pricing, you definitely need to take care of that before you can move on to this team-based business model. When it comes to your team, above all, guys, in order to scale a successful team-based business, it's not just about looking at things like an investment and making sure that you have that markup, but it's also about bringing on team members to a business that is organized. And that means having standard operating procedures. You guys know I'm obsessed with standard operating procedures. I'm going to leave you with my resource here of creating SOPs for your business, because I know that if you are building a business online or offline, this is usually the number one reason that team members run, is because they don't know what you want them to do. And I find that having a standard operating procedure for the recurring task you are delivering to them, whether it be something in your own business or something that you're doing for a client that you are delegating to a team member, you need to make sure that it's buttoned up, and you need to take the time and put that effort in, hence expenses, right guys? Like, this is more in that line of things that you need to consider when you're bringing on teams. Like, if you're an online business manager and you are making sure that all of your standard operating procedures are buttoned up and so on and so forth, that cost of your time in all of those things definitely needs to be considered. Now, I hope that this didn't scare you off of the team-based business model. It is absolutely fantastic and one of the only ways to scale as an online business manager. And if you enjoyed this and you love these resources, make sure you hit subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when I drop a new video. And I hope to see you next week when we go live with our next video. See you soon.